Paul
Yes.
Adelstein.
Hello, sir.
What's up, man?
How are you? Good to see you.
Fantastic, man. Good to see you too. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
How's life treating you today?
Life's good today. It's it's already getting dark. It's feeling a little Christmassy here in LA, which I know people say, "Oh, it's not a thing," but I feel like it is. It's chilly. It's sweater weather at night. I like it.
Absolutely. Paul, right before you came on, we were
Yeah.
talking about Andre Braugher,
Yeah.
and you worked with him on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
And
I actually worked with him on a show called Hack in 2002 or 3 or 4. It was
wow,
a CBS show that he starred on with David Morse about like
wow.
a taxi cab driver in Philly that becomes kind of a vigilante, and Andre was his kind of cop friend, and I played Andre's partner.
Oh my
I
God.
did, I think, 8 or 10 episodes where I got to play Andre's partner, and then I worked with
Wow.
him again on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
What was he like?
He was like something we should all aspire to be at all times. I mean, he was just kind of one of those people that was just a light always. I don't think I ever saw him in a bad mood. He was always singing, literally one of those people always singing, always goofing around in the best, healthiest way, but totally prepared, ready to do the work, totally supportive of me. Like we talked about acting so much in theater and coming up, and I already loved his work so much on Homicide and in Glory and Get on the Bus, which is another one of my favorite movies. And
Yes.
he was totally like, he would, he was the guy. He had all the stories and he wanted to tell them. But I mean, I'm sure you've seen the tributes coming in. He was just a powerful man. He was a really big guy. I think people don't maybe that didn't track on TV as much, but he was a large guy and he
Yeah.
had that deep voice.
Yeah.
There was this kind of like warmth that radiated off of him. And he was just such a brilliant actor.
Truly.
I know when people, celebrities pass, we all try to make it about ourselves, which I try not to do. But I had an incredible moment on that show with him, which is one of
Oh,
those.
please tell us. We want to know.
First of all, before an emotional scene, I saw him do it twice, wherever it was. One time it was in David Morse's kitchen. It was just the three of us. They're setting up and they're rolling, and in between takes, he would just close his eyes and he would just start singing. And he wasn't like, I'm demanding all this attention or everybody be quiet. It was usually a little bit to himself. Sometimes it would get louder, more emotional, and it's just kind of what he did and where he went. But I remember even at the time taking it in that the comfort with which he could enter into that space, know what he needed to do, but also not make it anybody else's problem.
Right.
He wasn't like, everyone be quiet after sing, or like, I have to leave set to sing. He was just in a corner of the kitchen, just shut his eyes, just started. It was really quite beautiful.
What a wonderful memory for you to share with us, because when you said yes so graciously to me, I thought this is my opportunity to really grill you about your work, because you are such a versatile actor. Your resume is enviable. It's stacked. The work you do is so impeccable. So my question to you is, you were just talking about Andre's process. What conditions do you feel you do your best work in? What do you like from the set?
That's such an interesting question. I mean, I think for our listener watchers edification, it's important to know that no two sets are the same. Never have been, never will be. They're snowflakes, right? And therefore, you can know what your best conditions are to work, but you rarely can dictate those conditions. That was something, it took me a while. It was on Private Practice to have to get over I needed it to be a certain way to get a certain thing done. I don't think I was ever a tyrant about it or anything. But I saw you in one of the questions that you sent me about stuff we were talking about. You said stuff in your eye line, noise,
Yes.
that can be very distracting to an actor.
Right.
I also need those kinds of that respect kind of taken. But there are certain sets where you can ask for that and it's just simply not going to happen. And I would find myself getting pissed.
You find yourself getting
I
pissed?
have found myself getting pissed. And,
Okay.
the problem with getting pissed is it's only you that gets screwed up.
And you might be getting further away from where you're trying to get to for the scene.
Exactly right. And you can get in your head about that.
Yes.
It can happen in auditions and it can happen at work. I mean,
yeah.
I think theater is great training for that because every night there's going to be something's going to go wrong. Somebody's going to be coughing. A cell phone's going to go off. All that stuff. I think that. So a long way around is to say, obviously, I think we all do our best work in a situation where we find it safe to do our work. It doesn't even have to be something that's vulnerable. The whole enterprise is vulnerable. Right. You're trying to deliver something that you're not going to get another shot at. That's how it's different than theater. You're not coming back tomorrow to do that scene again. Once they have it, that's it.
Yeah.
So that can kind of engender a certain rigidness on our part because you're like, oh, I got to get this right, and I want to make sure that every single thing is covered. And I think that you have to let go of that a little bit in order to allow yourself to be in whatever environment is actually happening at the time, as opposed to trying to be like, oh, I wish it were an hour earlier, or I wish we had had lunch. I wish I hadn't had lunch before this scene, but after this scene, all that stuff. That I'm sure there are some number one on the call sheet movie stars who literally can dictate,
right, when they shoot a scene.
Yeah. Like what time of day, like where the sun is in the sky, if they're going to shoot a thing,
right,
even if it's inside, just because it's going to mess up their juju. But I think the short answer is I do my best work when I feel prepared and that I focus on the task in front of me, literally meaning that scene, that shot, that line, that actor standing across from me. Because I think, making a TV show or a movie, it's a big undertaking and there's a lot of factors at work.
Yeah.
And you
go ahead.
You got to try to deal with all that stuff. The next wardrobe you're going to have, the script that just came out that you want to talk to the creator about. You're feeling bad about the scene you just did. You're nervous about the scene that's coming up, and you got to try to strip that stuff away and say, okay, I'll use the sports analogies. It's like, one play at a time, next play up. You got to forget about the one that came and forget about the one that's coming and just do that one. So whatever you need to do for yourself to get yourself into that space, I think creates the best environment to do your work.
Beautiful. Asking for another take. Are you shy about that? Under what circumstances do you do it? I'm asking about you, and then I want you to advise people who are listening. So let's talk about you first.
I do.
Okay.
I feel like I don't do it often. I feel that it's a totally respectful thing to do, as long as you have that relationship with the director, so that it doesn't become you calling across sets, especially if you're a series let's say, to the purposes of what you're trying to get at here. If you're the series regular and they're a guest director, let's make it as an extreme as possible. They're brand new. Okay. The first day, you've been on the show for 5 years.
Yes.
If you're standing 50 feet away and you go, hey, can I get another take? You're putting them
on the spot,
kind of on the spot. And it's a little bit of power play might not be the right word, but
A flex. It's a bit of a flex.
It's a bit. They can't really say no. I mean, maybe the first AD can say no. We don't have time. But rarely that's you're going to get that take. I think it's a much better, more respectful and collaborative thing to say to the first AD or to whomever, just give me 1 second and go over to the director and say, can I have another one? I mean, a lot of times they'll come up before moving on and say,
right.
do you want another one? Are you happy? I think that you also have to keep your antenna up, because if you've done 2 takes,
yep,
and you feel like something is not right and you want to try something a little different, communicating that, but also knowing, like, if it's been 10 takes and then it's like, can I have one more? It's especially in television where they're like, it can feel like you're like you're not paying attention to the machinery around you.
right.
But that being said,
Yeah,
like I was saying, no 2 situations and no 2 dynamics are the same. So
yeah,
if you really need it,
yeah.
you should do it. Did you see the Matt Damon? Here's a Matt Damon interview.
Project Greenlight?
No, he talked about Spielberg on Saving Private Ryan, which is obviously one of his first big things, or one of his first things. I don't even know. And that they were shooting something, and he said to Spielberg when they were moving on, he said, I feel like a couple more takes and we were really getting it even better. And Spielberg said, I could spend the hour to make that scene 5% better, or I can go shoot the rest of my movie. So,
that's dope.
I don't think he was being like a jerk, but I think it's
right.
important to also be able to gauge, is the director really champing at the bit to get to the next thing? Like, what's our day looking like? And it sounds like you're taking a million things into consideration at once. It's really just really the vibe.
Right. Reading the room,
knowing no 2 sets are the same. There are certain sets I would never ask.
Never.
No.
Right.
Never, ever, ever. I mean, there's been things I would never deign ask. I mean, I was in a Coen Brothers movie. There's no asking for another.
Copy that.
It's their ball game. It's their ball game. You know what I mean?
That leads me to an amazing question, because I texted you after I saw you in The Menu, which I loved. If y'all haven't seen that movie, you really should. It came out last year. It was amazing. Process-wise, do you approach doing a feature like The Menu different than when you're a series regular, specifically on a show?
Well, the difference is you have the beginning, the middle, and an end, and the end on a film. And you have the beginning and the middle and the end in theater. And what's so cool about TV, and but also challenging about it, is that it is open-ended. So you can only do the episode you have, or maybe what's coming down the pike. But it's another kind of lesson I was saying before about just doing what's right in front of you, because you could do a scene and then the next week find out, get new information that maybe would have affected that scene the way you played it, because now they're like, oh, actually your parents died in a car crash and you're like, but I had this whole thing about my parents and I didn't know that. So that's just kind of a practical difference that you have to kind of stay knees bent, ready position to constantly be adjusting.
Love that. I love your sports analogies.
Yeah, I got lots of them. But I would also say, in regards to The Menu, some are going to be more similar than others, but every film or TV show is going to have its own process. That, for instance, we shot that almost in sequence. For people that haven't seen the movie, it basically 90% of it takes place in one dining room, essentially, with a bunch of people having dinner, and it goes through the dinner from the appetizer to the dessert. And a lot of crazy shit happens over the course of this dinner. It really helped us, obviously, to shoot it in order, because, otherwise you're like, wait, what just what just happened? Is my shirt ripped? How much of this food have I eaten? So kind of doing it allowed you to process-wise really just give over to where you were that day, because that was really that whole movie, because everybody's almost in every scene and in each other's
Right.
backgrounds, was really felt a lot like theater, in that it was start at the beginning and see where we go today. Because it was it felt so organic when we were shooting it. We were all mic'd up the whole time.
Yeah.
We were all improvising the whole time, even when we were off camera. That's
Oh,
what
wow. Nice.
that's what they wanted. So
yeah, you could see that and feel that. I thought it was scripted, but okay.
yeah, I mean, and then what was great too is they had the writers on set. So then the writers would hear a thing, they would refine it. They'd say in this one, maybe say this instead of this, and it was a kind of rolling process like that. So yeah, that's how you approach that particular one, and
Yeah.
that was one of those. What's great about one of the really fun things about film and TV sometimes is you're in the place, you're eating the food, you're running down the street. Sometimes it doesn't require, acting. There's the Robert Mitchum thing that he would write in his script, NAR, no acting required.
Amazing.
Like in a scene, like whatever it happened to be. And
right.
So, I mean, that's kind of some place we all want to get to in every scene, but there's certain stuff where you're just, okay, I'm in this space. This is what's happening. Turn on the camera. Let's see how that goes,
Right. Dope. Family, Paul has not seen the course. We have not talked about the course. And what he just said about TV, the difference of being a series regular in that it's open-ended, is exactly what we talk about in great detail in the course, being a series regular. Thank you for co-signing. I had no idea you were going to do that. That's dope. Thank you so much. You just talked about the writers being on set.
Yeah.
When I met, you were a writer on Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce. You were also a series regular.
Yeah.
Now, was that the first time you've ever done that?
Yeah, yeah.
Dope. From that experience, do you have can you give the series regulars some advice from what you learned from that experience of being a writer and a series regular at the same time?
I think that every actor, I think it should be like guild rules. I think every actor should spend 2 days in a writer's room.
I agree.
Not participating.
Yeah.
Not participating it doesn't even have to be their show. Like just to see how that process works mid-season or even the breakage of a season. I think it was it made things that would sometimes when you're an actor and you get a script, you get a change and you go, what? I don't know what, and no one's there to explain it. And I'm not going to say, oh, this seems stupid, but sometimes it can just knock you off your groove a little bit because you're like, I don't get where this is coming from. I'll have to dig down in this. When you're in a writer's room, you see, oh, they're laying track for this thing that's coming later and da-da-da-da. So even if you don't specifically know why that changes, it's for a good reason. And if you trust, and if it's a healthy set and a healthy writer's room, you say, okay, I get that there's something going on here, as opposed to just, this feels like randomness. I think one of the, so I think that's one. Two is, and I learned this on Private Practice, certainly, which was before Girlfriend's Guide, because this is kind of what, one of the things that Shonda Rhimes is brilliant at, is that, especially in a longer running show, or especially in the first season of a show, the writer's room with a good showrunner, they are writing to what's working.
That's in the course. Sorry.
And you can't, as an actor, you can't control that. You're gonna be like, I'm gonna really try in this scene because I want to work with this person more. But it is unless it's like a hardcore, super plotted mystery or something where they can't really mess with who's doing what with whom. They're gonna say, oh, I love these scenes with Jay August and Lisa on Girlfriend's Guide, who and they were brother-in-law, right? Yeah, brother-in-law.
Yeah, brother-in-law.
And it was
Yep.
like, that wasn't really part of the dynamic, but I remember Marty Noxon, the creator of the show, saying after, I think maybe probably just the first episode was being shot, and it probably wasn't even edited yet, she said, this thing really works. We need to figure out a way to get them, you know, on screen together more. It's not just enjoyable, like they have chemistry, but it's also something elucidating about Abby's relationship to her brother, and that she's closer with the husband. And, you know, you see these things take shape in front of your eyes. And I think that stuff happens on films too, a little bit. But again, TV is like the constant laying of track, right? Like constantly laying track. And so that will happen. I think it's important to know that in a writer's room. And then I will also say,
Sidebar, this is gold.
okay,
Thank you.
pleasure.
Please continue.
Pleasure. I also think that every writer
Yep.
spend a day, at least a day, with an actor. And I don't mean go to set and sit behind the monitor, because I think
Right.
that's obviously probably more important. They are the writer on set for a given episode is kind of the shepherd of that episode. They're there to make sure the director and the showrunner are seeing eye to eye or communicating the things that need to be communicated. But I think that, and I would do this with my friends from home when I started acting, they'd be like, "Oh, I want to come to work with you," and I'd be like, "Okay, come to work. You're coming to work with me, but you're coming when I go to work, right? And you're leaving when I leave, and you're going everywhere I go." And I'm not. It's not like, oh, because it's so challenging, but I think it's important to see what the rhythm of an actor's day is.
Yes.
I think it's a really. I mean, a lot of writers haven't really spent time on set, so they don't know how sets work, one. And if they do know how they work, sometimes they know how they work from a production standpoint, but which is obviously crucial. But I think the insight you get by following frankly, any department person from any department around, but especially with the actors, I think it is really elucidating for writers, it's elucidating for writers to see how the rhythm of an actor's day goes. Not that it's going to change what they write necessarily,
Sure,
but it's going to change how they see how the job gets executed. And that kind of taking away the veil a little bit, the mystery between how do you do what you do, how do I do what I do, makes the communication that much easier. You know, I'm sure you've been on these sets, there are some TV sets where there can become an us versus them mentality between the writers and the cast.
Yes.
And it's
horrible.
It's horrible. It's not good for anybody. It becomes a kind of downward spiral. And anything you can do to keep that from happening and create a positive mutual respect, we're all on the same team, even if we disagree thing is super helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. That was gold. I got to let you go because I promised you a certain amount of time. But before we do, I just want to end on this note. You know, it's the end of the year. We got a brand new SAG contract. There's all this controversy about artificial intelligence from a writing standpoint, from an acting standpoint. And I just wanted to ask you, what do you think the future of our business is? I mean, just like looking forward in terms of everything that we just went through. Can you read the tea leaves a little for me?
I mean,
I know that's a lot to ask.
I am a pretty hopeful person, and some would say maybe Pollyanna and only seeing the upside, but I meant to send it to you. Did I send you the Billy Wilder thing?
You did.
Oh, yeah. Billy Wilder was one of the, greatest director writers of all time, gave a speech, I don't know when that was, the 60s or 70s. And he said, I've been around for 50 years and I've watched Hollywood vacillate between, fear and paralysis, or fear. And then it's always like, oh, the talkies are going to ruin movies. Television's going to ruin movies. Video cassette's going to ruin movies. DVDs are going to ruin movies. And obviously, while things have changed and AI is obviously a big one coming down the pike and will certainly come to bear on what we do, that I'm hopeful in movies, TV, theater, but also at large, that you're not replacing the human brain and the human heart. And that people want to see actors, characters they know and love interact with one another humanly, and that they don't want necessarily Brad Pitt to be 35 his whole life. The part of having relationships with these kind of iconic actors is
that you grow with them.
you watch them. Well, like, what's DiCaprio going to be like when he's you know? I remember.
Yep.
I just remember my dad always being like, "Wow, Paul Newman's really getting old." You know, Paul Newman's really getting old. Still looks good though. You know, like that. It was like growing up with somebody, and that there's a journey there. You get to see people play different roles. I think that I'm sure AI is going to give some wonderful things, and I'm sure there'll be some controversial things too. But I just can't believe that novels and acting and music, that can be replicated to make it more human than humans. I just think we've been telling stories a long time, sitting around the fire, you know, and I don't think that changes. I think that is still essentially the thing that we're doing. And so hopefully that is a built-in protection.
Oh, woo! Yo, that was a bar. Built-in protection.
Hopefully.
That was a bar, Paul.
Hopefully.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
I
It's such a
appreciate
pleasure.
you so much. Thank you. God bless, man.
All right, man.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
All
Bye,
right, man.
everybody.